49ers Rush Podcast. And here's your host, John Chapman.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the 49ers Rush Podcast. I'm your host, as always, John Chapman. And with me today, I'm pretty excited about this. You guys know I love betting. This gentleman next to me, Connor Allen, with 4 for 4. If you guys ever do anything with betting, that's the place to go to. He put out some crazy information that I just thought, I reached out to him yesterday. I was like, dude, I got to have you on. Connor, how are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing well. As we talked about it before the show, we love to, bet on the NFL, love to bet some futures here and then. And I thought that this was a good way to kind of break down the market and see if we can get an advantage.
Dude, I love it. And so, again, if you're not following Connor, please do me a favor. Head over to Twitter at Connor Allen NFL, and that's Connor with an O, 2 O's. Connor Allen NFL. He just put out this thing. So this is a little bit, we're deviating a little bit from what we usually do here at the 49ers Rush. So what I want you to set up for us, Connor, walk us into your crazy brain head and help us understand why you took this project on. And for those that don't know what it is, talk to us about kind of what you figured out.
Yeah, so essentially sports books like the Westgate Superbook and DraftKings, they release spreads for every game for the whole 18-week season. And so you can kind of use that against them in some senses. So we see win totals. Every team has a win total. So for example, the 49ers win total is, 9.5 in most spots. And so, but if we look at each game for every week, we'll look at week 1 as an example. The 49ers are 6.5 point favorites over the Bears. So luckily I was able to partner with some people who have a historical model, which tell you how often a team that's a 6.5 point favorite wins that game. So it's around 70%. So we'll just use that as a ballpark number. So essentially I assigned a number to, that game. So like the 49ers get credit for 0.7 of a win. And so kind of going through that through every single game, you kind of can get an implied win total. Essentially, it's like how much every game is telling us, you add it up over the course of the season, how many games they should probably win. Now, obviously, there's flaws in this because you either win or you don't in the regular season. But at the same time, this is how actually sportsbooks a lot of times often start to set lines, like win totals, and then the market shapes it from there. So I thought that this is kind of a good way to check on sportsbooks and see what teams are getting more credit in the market than we just think deserve, what teams are getting less credit. And I think the 49ers are a great team, so I'm glad to be on this show because there are a lot of interesting notes about it.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because when the schedule comes out, everybody wants to know, all right, what's your record prediction, right? And it's easy to sit there and go, okay, 49ers versus the Packers or the Bucks or whomever, it doesn't really matter. But this is the deep analytical side. And, we do our weekly betting special on this show throughout the whole season. We've done very, very well. But the people in the desert, they've got some good information, to say the least. Whenever you've got all these millions and millions of dollars riding on the outcomes of these games, they're going to be well informed. And so, Connor, let's go through. All right, you kind of walked us through the platform itself. I'm going to throw this up on the screen here. Here you can see Twitter. This is Connor Allen NFL. If you want to check this out, he did this thread where he jumped through some of the teams that stood out. You had the 49ers at 4 in your thread, which is awesome. Walk us through kind of what we're looking at here and these implied wins with the 49ers and what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. So starting at the left column there, we have their win total. That's just, what sportsbooks are setting their win total. So over under 9.5 wins for the 49ers is kind of their projected win total. And then if we move one column over there, the number of games they're favored in, 13. So that means out of the 8 or 17 games they're playing, they're favored in 13 of them, which I find
crazy.
To be, yeah, exactly. And so, then you look at their implied win total at the next column, which is kind of the process that I explained you to. It adds up. So, they're 10.6 implied wins. So it's almost like the sportsbooks are not really giving them enough credit with their win total versus what they're giving us on a weekly basis with their lines. So
now, and I'll say this just real quick for those that are listening traditional podcast forms and not on YouTube or Twitch or any of the other places, Twitter, basically here's the whole situation. And again, you seem to put a lot into FanDuel win totals. Did you take in other sports bets or bookie sites or whatever, or was that kind of the?
Yeah, no, I took into account other ones. I mean, I just made it simple just to do FanDuel as like one of our sponsors of 4for4 that we have. But we have a betting odds table over at 4for4 that's free that we can compare all the different sports books and all the different odds for all of those. So I'm sure you can probably get, I think 9.5 is the best number, but there's obviously varying juice across different books.
Right. And, another thing, if you look at this list, the 49ers are relatively low as far as FanDuel win totals, right? 9.5, the highest only 11.5. So there's a 2-game kind of variance from the top of the NFL with the Bills and the Bucks down to the 49ers, just on the FanDuel projected win totals. Now we get to games favored. That is a different story. The 49ers are right up near the top. Why are they favored in 13 games, but only 9.5 is the projected win total with Vegas? Connor, what are your takes on perhaps why these, sports books are kind of playing the under on the 49ers win totals?
Yeah, I think they're kind of playing into the variance of the 49ers as a whole. And I'm sure you've talked about it on the show before, but the whole Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo saga has just been, ongoing. There was a lot of chatter a couple of weeks ago about how Trey Lance wasn't living up to expectations. Now the recent chatter of the past week has been that he's been lighting up the defense, and obviously that's just the normal offseason roller coaster that we see.
Right.
But I think that they're just not really sure what to do with the 49ers. And I think that's reflected in the market here in a variety of ways, because I think the 49ers with Trey Lance, obviously if he hits a ceiling, this is a clear Super Bowl contender that, I would say actually should be one of the favorites in the NFC, versus if Trey Lance is not who they wanted him to be and kind of played like he did last season at times, they're probably looking closer to like 7 or 8 wins. They still have a great roster though. So I think that they're kind of building in that variance here where on a game-to-game basis, they're keeping them within a really tight range. The 49ers are actually only underdogs by more than a field goal in one game, and that's at the Rams. So every game
that's a home game for the 49ers, baby.
Exactly. And so I mean, I'm pretty sure they won that game this year actually as dogs on the road. So I think that's like more than winnable game. So I think they're going to be close in a lot of games this year.
Now, a quick question, kind of stepping back from this. Have you found it different with the win totals with what Vegas is putting out there with the addition of the 18th game? 17th game, week 18? Because, man, I'm not going to lie. I keep wanting to smash the over on so many different win totals because we're used to seeing kind of the 9.5, 8.5 win totals. But now every team has an extra game. I don't feel like the sports books have really made, I don't know, am I crazy that they haven't really adjusted it with that, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I think it's tough because I keep like my brain had to be fixed, a little bit almost from like what we saw 2 years ago. And then now last year was the first year with the 18th week. I mean, I think that you have a good point. Like the only concern is obviously, again, like the last week, some teams rest guys, some teams don't. That's kind of one of the biggest flaws with all this. But yeah, I think there's still plenty of teams that you could be hitting the over and like using this process. Like you saw 49ers favored in 13 games, even if you're giving them a 50-50 chance there, I think that they're in a good spot to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I like that. And, let's jump back. Let's talk some other teams in the NFC West real quick while we got you here, Connor. The Rams. Anytime you bring up the 49ers, the Rams, that conversation's just going to continue to go back and forth. Now, the Rams have, they're at 10.5 and their number to favorite games only 11. That seems kind of interesting to me that basically they're projecting the Rams to win every single game that they're favored in, which makes sense. But I don't know, man. Like I have the Rams slated slightly higher than the 49ers in my power rankings. But was there anything that you took away diving into this with the Rams win totals for the year?
Yeah, so I mean, the Rams right now, using opposing win totals, they actually are slated to face the third toughest strength of schedule in the league. And so that's kind of probably the reason that they're not favored in more games, because you look at other similar teams on here, team like Green Bay, 10.5 win total. They're favored in 15 games, so obviously much more favorable schedule. Tampa Bay, 11.5 win total, 16 games they're favored in, whereas the Rams only favored in 11. You see like there, the implied wins is right about, kind of pretty close there with the win total. In terms of it's a 10.7, win totals 10.5. So I think there's no true takeaway here, but I think that, I do think that the strength of schedule is the reason that they're not favored in more games.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Yeah, it's weird. The 49ers win total 10.6, the Rams 10.7. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not betting on the Rams anyway, but if I was, I hate these numbers. I feel like they're being the Super Bowl champion. I understand they're kind of being favored, but man, Arizona Cardinals, all right, they're projected the same amount of wins, as far as FanDuel goes, 9.5 wins. That's the over under. I love this betting the under. I'm not the biggest Arizona Cliff Kingsbury guy. What do you think here?
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree. I think that Cliff has been, a little bit overrated here. I actually saw someone's coaches rankings come out that they had Cliff as like a top 10, top 5 head coach or something like that. And I was like,
for what?
Yeah, right. What has he done to deserve that?
Maybe on his own roster.
Yeah, Cardinals 8th toughest strength of schedule. They also have negative amount of net rest, which is something where if you kind of look at the amount of times where they're going to be either playing on the road on a short week or they're playing a team coming off a bye, they have a negative amount of net rest. So that's obviously disadvantageous for them. And as you're pointing to on this year, they're only favored in 8 games and their implied wins is 9.1, which is fewer than their win total. I mean, I think their win total should probably be like 8.5.
Yeah, especially, they always start off hot until their depth kind of shows that they don't have any, and then they struggle. And with, DeAndre Hopkins being suspended for the first part of the season, there's just so many red flags. I understand Marquise Brown coming over, all those things. That's great. But I've bet the under several times on Arizona. I don't like season long bets too much, but that's one I really, really like. One thing that's interesting, Connor, you brought up the net rest. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so actually, it was Warren Sharp did some research on essentially on
Love Sharp.
NFL rest edges. So right now, like in the top of the league, Buffalo has plus 12 net rest edge. So essentially, they and you can go over to find the exact like kind of graph. And I tweeted out actually in the thread there as well. So essentially, if you're playing a team coming off of a bye, they have 7 extra days of rest than you do.
Gotcha.
So that would be like a plus 7. Or if you have to go play a team on Thursday coming off a Sunday and they had a bye, obviously they'd be coming off of like 10, 11 days of rest and you'd be coming off of only 4. So you'd be at a negative 7-day net rest, the disadvantage there too. So, he put it all together where you can look at each team's total rest and then you get like a net rest thing as well. And obviously break it down further from there because it's something we look at every week. We look at, this team's playing on a short week or this team's playing on, a longer week coming off of a bye. So I guess looking at it from a full season perspective makes a lot of sense. And I'm surprised that people haven't really started doing it until, lately.
Do you happen to have the 49ers kind of score on that available? I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is, I think it was actually about even here. So they're plus 3. So they do have to play a team coming off the bye, but almost every team does. But they also have multiple other advantages here. So they have like plus 3 days of net rest. That ranks like a little bit above average. I try and not factor in too much in terms of like the middle of the pack, but obviously it's a weekly thing there. So, they're gonna have some weeks where they're in good spots and some weeks where only like really 1 or 2 weeks where they're in like harder spots than normal, but nothing really outrageous.
Gotcha. And, for the 49ers, any average is fine when it comes to scheduling. Being on the West Coast, you kind of get screwed with traveling and all those time zones and early kickoffs on the East Coast. So anything close to average for the 49ers as scheduling is concerned, I'll take that in a heartbeat. All right, now, Connor, before we get out of here, I want to relish and just enjoy this last part. The Seattle Seahawks. Yikes. Maybe the worst offseason that I can remember. I see they're at the very bottom of your list. What's going on there?
The Seahawks are, I think, a complete disaster. I'm sure you mentioned it, but just the moves here, getting rid of Russell Wilson. He was their, savior pretty much, I think, for the past few years. Now rolling out either Drew Lock or Geno Smith. As you can see on the sheet here, the win total is at 5.5. They're only favored in 4 games. Their implied win total is 6.7, but this is one of those things where I think as I mentioned earlier, you either in the real NFL, you either get a win or you don't. So it's 1 or 0. Whereas this process, you're credited like the Seahawks for like 0.3 of a win, 0.4 of a win, even though they're probably going to lose most of those games. And I think the market actually might be giving them too much credit. And as you see here, they're only favored in 4 games this season. So for them to go over their win total, they'd have to win 6 or more. And I'm just not buying it given their current roster construction.
Man, it's interesting. I will not bet this one. One, I can't bet that the Seattle Seahawks are going to win more than 5.5 games just because my soul won't let me. And two, I don't want to bet the under because 5.5 games is so few. So like this is, even though they're projected and all the stuff, I just can't touch this bet because it's just too much. It's too little. And I don't know. I don't like it. Now, real quick, Connor, you're recording your show tonight. Can you walk us through your show so that my listeners can join you over there? Because great content, man. It's incredible what you guys do.
I really appreciate it. So yeah, we have our Move the Line podcast tonight. It'll be streaming on 4for4 Football's YouTube channel, and we'll actually going to be this week going through my thread a little bit more, talking more win totals, kind of breaking down the process, looking at some other teams that stand out, in the rest of the league. But on a week-to-week basis, we'll basically break down our favorite bets, talk about sides, some totals, some team totals, and then things to watch for, kind of like key advantages or disadvantages each week of the season.
Dude, freaking awesome. At Connor Allen NFL. Again, that's CONNOR Allen NFL. You got to go follow this guy. It made me a smarter fan, and I think he just brings a lot, and especially when we get into our bets this year. Connor, we're going to be reaching back out to you, man, so just appreciate what you do.
Oh, appreciate you having me on anytime. Anytime you want me to come on, I am game.
All right, guys, we will be continuing with our 90 players detailed series, our 49ers roster countdown, but that's going to do it for us right now. And until next time, stay strong, faithful.